It was America's darkest secret, and it had just exploded in my backyard. On March 13th, 1962, in sleepy Montauk, New York, my life shattered into chaos. My name is Alex Carter, and up until that freezing spring night, I thought my father was just a quiet electrical engineer working for the government. But the blinding flash of light and the ear-splitting roar changed everything. I was 15, playing basketball in our driveway, when the ground shook violently. An explosion echoed through the trees. Lights flickered out. My father burst from the house, face white with terror, grabbing me by the shoulders, his eyes wild. "Alex, listen carefully," he hissed, his voice barely audible above the chaos. "Whatever happens next, never trust them." Before I could ask who they were, black sedans sped past, headlights blazing. Men in suits spilled out, shouting orders. They took my father away that night. He didn't resist. He just looked at me with haunted eyes, whispering silently, "I'm sorry." Days later, after authorities claimed it was merely a military accident, I couldn't shake the feeling they were lying. My father was still missing. So I searched the basement, desperate for answers. Behind rusted shelves, hidden by shadows and dust, I found a concealed panel in the wall. Inside was a metal box filled with documents, photographs, and blueprints labeled Project Montauk. My heart thundered as I scanned the files. They spoke of mind control experiments, secret military bases beneath Camp Hero, and technology that sounded straight out of science fiction. And in every photo, there was my father, smiling coldly, alongside people I'd never seen, in uniforms marked with symbols I'd never imagined. Then I found a file that made my stomach churn: Operation Mindstorm. It described covert experiments conducted on American soil. Experiments designed to manipulate memories, emotions, and thoughts. My father, it turned out, wasn't just involved, he was in charge. But the worst was yet to come. At the bottom of the file, scrawled hastily in red ink, was a chilling warning. If discovered, terminate all subjects immediately. That night, sleep evaded me. Every sound made my pulse quicken. And then, precisely at midnight, there was a soft knock at the back door. Peering outside, I saw a figure cloaked in darkness. I cautiously opened the door. A man stepped forward, face hidden under a hood, voice trembling with urgency. Red triangle pointed out. "Alex Carter, your father sent me. They're coming for you next. You must know the truth before it's too late." I stood frozen, my mind racing. Who was he? What did he know? And what horrifying secret was my father hiding beneath Montauk? I had no choice but to follow him into the unknown. We moved swiftly through the shadows, the mysterious stranger leading me away from my home into the dense woods surrounding Montauk. Every snapped twig and rustling leaf made my heart leap into my throat. After what felt like hours, he stopped near an abandoned, decrepit shack, hidden within thick underbrush. Inside, under the dim light of a flickering lantern, he finally revealed himself. His name was Thomas Blake, a former scientist who once worked alongside my father at Camp Hero. He spoke urgently, his voice low and intense, eyes filled with regret and fear. "Alex, your father isn't who you think he is. Neither am I. We were part of something sinister, something that went horribly wrong. Operation Mindstorm was only the beginning. They're experimenting with time itself." As Thomas explained, my head spun with disbelief. He told me about experiments that pushed the boundaries of science and ethics. The goal was to create technology capable of manipulating reality and controlling individuals' minds, altering perceptions and rewriting memories at will. It was supposed to be America's ultimate weapon, an invisible power stronger than bombs. My father, initially blinded by patriotism and curiosity, soon discovered the true horror of these experiments. When he tried to expose the project, he became the enemy. The explosion at Camp Hero was no accident. It was an assassination attempt meant to silence him forever. Thomas reached into his bag and produced a small vial filled with a luminescent blue liquid. "This," he whispered, "is the key. Your father stole it from the lab. It's a serum that unlocks suppressed memories. Memories the government erased from their own operatives to hide their crimes. Your father knew too much, and now, Alex, so do you." Fear surged through me as he handed me the vial. I stared into its hypnotic glow, understanding that whatever was inside could change my life forever. Thomas's next words echoed ominously. "If you drink this, there's no turning back. You'll see everything they tried to bury, but you'll also become their greatest threat." My hand shook as I gripped the vial. The choice was impossible, but deep down, I knew I'd already made it. I had to know the truth, no matter the cost. "Alex," Thomas urged softly, his eyes locked onto mine. Are you ready to see the secrets they've kept hidden beneath Montauk? I raised the vial, heart pounding. I'm ready. And with one final breath, I drank it down, plunging myself into darkness, not knowing if I'd ever return. I jolted awake, gasping for air. My vision blurred and then slowly came into focus. The world around me spun in disjointed fragments, familiar yet alien. I was no longer in the shack. Instead, I was lying on a cold metal floor, dim lights flickering above. Every muscle ached, and my head pounded as memories flooded my mind, memories I didn't know I had. Alex, can you hear me? A voice crackled through static. I struggled upright, realizing I was locked inside a cell, walls thick with reinforced steel. A small intercom speaker blinked red in the corner. Who are you? Where am I? My voice shook, panic seizing my throat. It's Thomas, he whispered urgently. They caught us. You're inside Camp Hero now. Whatever you do, don't tell them what you've remembered. Footsteps echoed down the corridor outside, heavy and rhythmic. A key turned loudly, the door groaned open, and two men entered, faces cold, uniforms immaculate. One stepped forward, his gaze penetrating. Alex Carter, he said calmly, without emotion. We've been expecting you. They led me through winding corridors, deeper beneath the facility than I'd imagined possible. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, their glare harsh and disorienting. We reached an interrogation room, stark and sterile, with a single table bolted to the floor. They seated me roughly, my hands trembling beneath the table. The door opened again, and a man entered, someone oddly familiar. It took a moment before recognition hit me like a physical blow. It was my father. He looked older, tired, his eyes dark and hollow. Alex, he said softly, voice filled with regret. I'm sorry I dragged you into this. Why? I demanded, my voice cracking. Why lie to me all these years? He paused, hesitating, searching my eyes. I was protecting you. If you knew the truth, if you remembered, it would have put you in danger. From whom? I asked, heart pounding. What have you done? He glanced at the guards briefly before leaning closer, his voice barely audible. They're afraid of you. You're the key to their greatest experiment. Your memories hold secrets they desperately need. Experiment. I echoed, my mind reeling. My father looked away, shame clouding his features. Alex, years ago, when you were very young, you were part of Project Montauk. You have abilities you can't yet understand, abilities they're terrified you'll discover. That's why I erased your memories, to hide you in plain sight. My chest tightened painfully. It felt surreal, impossible. What abilities? What did you do to me? He hesitated, voice thick with grief. You can manipulate time, Alex. That's why you're so valuable. And dangerous. Before I could process his words, alarms blared. Red lights flashed, and chaos erupted outside the room. My father leapt to his feet, eyes wild with panic. It's now or never, he shouted, grabbing my arm. We need to get out. We sprinted from the room, guards chasing us down corridors lit by the strobe of emergency lights. My father knew the facility intimately, guiding us swiftly through hidden passageways. Gunfire echoed behind us as we reached an emergency exit door. He punched in a code frantically, and the door hissed open, revealing the freezing night beyond. Outside, beneath the stars, I collapsed to my knees, gasping for breath. My father knelt beside me, gripping my shoulders, his eyes filled with urgency. Alex, listen carefully, he said firmly. They're not going to stop until you're back under their control or dead. You have to remember everything, quickly. It's the only way you'll survive. I stared at him, overwhelmed. But how? He reached into his pocket, handing me a small, weathered journal. This will help. It's all here. Every secret they've hidden, every lie they've told. Study it, unlock your past, and you'll understand your power. Just as he finished, headlights blazed in the distance. The black sedans returned, closing in fast. My father stood abruptly, pulling me to my feet. Run, he shouted desperately. I'll hold them off. Find Thomas, he's waiting by the old lighthouse. He knows the rest. I hesitated, panic surging, but he shoved me away forcefully. I ran blindly, tears streaming down my face, clutching the journal tightly. Behind me, gunshots rang out, echoing through the night. When I finally reached the lighthouse, Thomas stood anxiously waiting, illuminated by the faint glow of its beacon. His face fell when he saw me alone. Your father? He asked softly, already knowing the answer. They're coming, I gasped, holding out the journal. He said you'd explain everything. Thomas took the journal, eyes widening as he flipped through its pages. He looked up at me, determination hardening his features. It's worse than we thought, he whispered urgently. They've initiated the final phase. Montauk was only the beginning. They're going to use your powers to change history itself. I stood there, breathing heavily, reality closing in around me. Then how do we stop them? Thomas stared at me, his expression grave. Alex, if you're ready to face your past and your future, there might be one way, but it could cost you everything. Heart pounding, I nodded firmly, steeling myself for whatever came next. Tell me. And in that moment, beneath the beam of the lighthouse, I realized that nothing would ever be the same again. Thomas opened the journal again, turning to a page near the end filled with hurried handwriting and strange symbols. He held it toward the lighthouse beam, squinting carefully. Alex, he began cautiously, your powers are tied to the Montauk facility itself. There's an underground chamber beneath Camp Hero. It's the origin point, the core of the experiments. If you can reach it and control your powers there, you might be able to undo everything. My pulse quickened. Undo everything? What exactly are you asking me to do? Change history, Thomas said grimly. Stop Project Montauk before it starts. I swallowed hard, mind spinning at the implications. But what happens if I fail? He hesitated. Reality itself could unravel. But we don't have a choice. If they gain full control over your powers, they'll rewrite history as they see fit. We must take that risk. With no time left for doubts, Thomas and I quickly devised a plan. Under cover of darkness, we returned to Camp Hero. My heart pounded violently as we slipped through the perimeter fence, avoiding patrolling guards. Thomas guided me to a concealed hatch near the eastern boundary, hidden beneath thick bushes. He entered a code, and it clicked open silently. Descending into darkness, the air grew colder, damp, and heavy with a sense of dread. The walls vibrated subtly, alive with energy. Thomas handed me a flashlight, illuminating narrow passages and staircases that spiraled deeper into the earth. Finally, we reached a massive steel door. Thomas paused, taking a deep breath. This is it, Alex. Once we're through this door, there's no turning back. I'm ready, I whispered, trying to steady my voice. We entered cautiously. The chamber was immense, filled with futuristic consoles and monitors glowing eerily. At its center stood an ominous device, pulsating softly with blue energy, a towering structure that seemed out of place, almost alien. That's the chronosphere, Thomas explained quietly. It's linked directly to your powers. Suddenly, footsteps echoed loudly behind us. Turning sharply, we saw my father entering slowly, hands raised in peace. Dad? I asked, confusion and relief warring within me. I'm here to help, he said firmly. You can't do this alone. Before I could respond, alarms erupted throughout the facility. Guards stormed into the chamber, weapons drawn. At their lead was the man who had interrogated me earlier, cold determination etched into his features. This ends now, he shouted, aiming directly at me. Without thinking, I instinctively raised my hand. Time slowed, the room freezing around me. The bullet halted inches from my chest, suspended impossibly in midair. My powers surged, raw and uncontrolled. My father's voice broke through my concentration, urgent and commanding. Focus, Alex. Direct your energy at the chronosphere. Gathering every ounce of strength, I turned towards the glowing structure. A surge of energy erupted from me, colliding violently with the chronosphere. It shuddered, crackling wildly. Reality itself began to ripple and distort around us. It's working. Thomas shouted desperately over the chaos. The room fractured, images flickering wildly. I saw glimpses of different timelines, alternate realities, possibilities never realized. The force was overwhelming, nearly unbearable. My father and Thomas reached out, steadying me as I struggled to maintain control. Amid the storm of shifting realities, a single moment crystallized. I saw clearly the exact point in history where Project Montauk began, a choice my father made years ago. If I altered that moment, everything could change. But what consequences would follow? Do it, Alex, my father urged softly, eyes filled with sorrow and determination. I reached out through the chaos, gripping tightly to that critical moment. With one final, desperate surge of power, I twisted time itself, rewriting history at its core. Everything went white. When the world returned, I stood alone on the sandy shores of Montauk, waves crashing softly nearby. Dawn broke gently over the horizon. Everything felt calm, strangely peaceful. My father approached quietly, a sad smile on his face. Is it over? I asked hesitantly. For now, he replied softly. But some secrets never truly disappear. You've changed history, Alex, but there will always be echoes. I looked around, reality subtly different yet familiar. And the others? Thomas. He shook his head solemnly. They don't exist in this. We stood in silence, absorbing the enormity of what had just happened. What now? I finally asked, voice barely audible. My father took a deep breath. We live, Alex. We remember, we guard these secrets, and we make sure history never repeats itself. We walked away together, leaving Montauk behind, but I knew, deep within me, that the story wasn't over yet. History had been changed, but secrets this powerful never remained buried for long. Life settled into a semblance of normality after Montauk, but beneath every ordinary day lingered the haunting shadow of what had transpired. Months passed, but my dreams were plagued by memories that shouldn't exist, visions of timelines that had never been. My father and I rarely spoke of it, but the unspoken truth hung heavy between us. On the anniversary of that fateful night, I found myself wandering along the beach at Montauk again. The waves crashed softly, the salty breeze familiar yet unsettling. Lost in thought, I nearly missed the soft footsteps approaching behind me. "Hello, Alex." I spun around, heart leaping to my throat. Thomas stood before me, calm and unchanged, as though no time had passed. "Thomas? But how?" I stammered, disbelief overwhelming. He smiled faintly, stepping closer. "Reality isn't as linear as we think. You've opened doors you can't fully close." Thomas motioned me to sit beside him on a large piece of driftwood. My pulse raced, anxiety clawing at my insides. "What do you mean? Did something go wrong?" He shook his head gently. "Everything happened exactly as intended. But your power doesn't just change reality, it creates it. Each choice spawns countless possibilities, each real and alive in their own right." I stared at him, comprehension dawning slowly. "You mean, those timelines still exist?" Thomas nodded solemnly. "Yes, Alex. And now, someone from another timeline wants to meet you." Before I could respond, the air shimmered and rippled beside us. A portal formed, light bending around its edges. A figure stepped out, silhouetted by the setting sun. As they approached, my blood ran cold. It was me. Another Alex, older, weary, with eyes hardened by experiences I couldn't fathom. "Hello, Alex," my other self said softly, his voice heavy with exhaustion. "I've waited a long time for this moment." "What's happening?" I whispered, barely able to form the words. He sighed deeply. "In my reality, you failed. Project Montauk became unstoppable, reshaping the world into something monstrous. I'm here to ensure it never happens again." "What do you need from me?" I asked, dread building within. My older self paused, looking out at the ocean. "To close the loop forever, one timeline must cease to exist completely. My reality, or yours." I felt nauseous. "You're asking me to destroy an entire world?" He turned, eyes filled with profound sadness. "I'm asking you to save countless others." My mind raced, struggling against the weight of responsibility. Finally, I nodded slowly, understanding that this burden was mine alone. With silent acceptance, we both reached out, clasping hands firmly. Energy surged between us, fierce and blinding. Reality itself quivered under our shared power. "Are you sure?" Thomas whispered, eyes wide with awe and grief. I smiled faintly, tears burning my eyes. This was always my destiny. My older self nodded solemnly, offering a final, weary smile. "Thank you," he whispered, voice trembling. "Remember us." As light engulfed us, everything vanished into white silence. When clarity returned, I was alone on the beach. The sun had set, leaving only the quiet darkness behind. A deep emptiness echoed within me, grief intertwined with relief. I stood slowly, preparing to leave when I noticed something lying in the sand, a familiar journal, weathered and ancient. Hands trembling, I opened it. Inside, written in my own handwriting, was a single line. "It's not over yet." I lifted my eyes to the horizon, dread and curiosity entwining tightly around my heart. History, it seemed, refused to let me go.